Well, welcome to the No Show. My name's Andrea Edwards.
I'm Tim Wade.
And I'm Joe Augustine. Welcome to the show that tries to have a look at the news that we didn't have a look at. And of course, try to have a different perspective on some of the world's issues as well. And we usually have a fourth voice to join us on the show for a mix in perspectives as well. But she's not able to join us because she's caught the cold.
No
Must be
show.
devastating. Anyway, so we have a show here where we try to get through some of the news very quickly, and then we get to the theme of the news today. And the theme today is global propaganda. It's getting worse. Now, how do we navigate this? Well, first of all, how you guys been? Everybody all right?
Yeah, had a bit of a mad dash to Singapore, as you know, Joe. We had our professional convention, professional speakers convention, which was amazing. My star takeaway was Simon Moore. Is it Simon Moore?
Simon Bowen.
Simon Bowen. Yeah, I found him really incredible. I love the way he thinks. So that he certainly got my attention. You? What was your favorite?
Well, pretty much Simon as well. It just that whole way of looking at things and then communicating things in a much quicker and succinct way. It's something that I can learn from. I've actually been using some of the ideas, trying to use some of his ideas, speaking with the family. So I'm still learning.
What was the idea with speaking with the family? Just quickly.
No, it's just about how people, when we visualize or when we try to talk about things, because I realize what I'm really good at is using words and keeping track of all the different ideas with words, and most people aren't the same, so it's much easier to just draw it out. So you just say from point A to point B, just draw it out, and then you draw a triangle. The whole idea was about creating visual models from the genius that you have, and it's a great idea. So. And I think a lot of members of the society have actually been contacting him, and I think we'll be doing more stuff with him. So incredible work there.
Yes, yeah, good guy. You would have enjoyed it, Tim.
Yeah, I wasn't there because I was singing in a choir, and the oddest thing happened as the choir master, as she was conducting the choir. There was one moment in the hymn that we were singing where everyone just didn't sing the line. It was bizarre, and I've gone back to the video to see what happened, but just the whole choir, apart from maybe 3 people, didn't sing the 5 words, and we'd sung it the day before perfectly fine, but in this particular performance, I suppose, we didn't sing it, and it was bizarre. So everyone was a bit sort of weirded out by it. I have a suspicion as to why, but it's not going to help anyone. So,
were cats involved?
Well, no. It was a bit weird, but yeah, no, there was lots of graduations happening, and I was involved in over 3 days of that. So I couldn't make it to the conference, which was unfortunate. But my update is I have finished one of my last 2 assignments just before the show, which is great. So I've got one more, but the hardest one is left. So I'm freaking out about that a little bit, but hopefully by next week it's done.
Well, great things have always happened in the religious world this way. Few people know about this, but they were actually 20 commandments, but he only had time to bring down 10.
Well, there was that incident with tripping. So
okay,
I think it was.
I've actually
Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1, where he comes down with, I got 15, and then he drops one. 10 commandments.
Yeah.
I've actually climbed that mountain where he was supposed to have gotten the 10 commandments, so I could imagine bringing. Yeah, that's a lot of work to bring those down. Yeah.
Did you have any insight while you're up there?
Just how beautiful the desert is.
Okay.
Really, just for every direction it's brown, but it's different colors of brown. So it was the first time I saw the real beauty of deserts and the amount of camels that are just running wild. And it was stunning. That was a long time ago, but I still remember it. And of course, being raised a Catholic, there's a lot of other, there's St. Catherine's Monastery at the bottom where there was the burning bush and, all that sort of stuff. So it's a pretty interesting place.
All right.
Cool.
I haven't been.
Okay, well, we're going to try and stay on track of the show here. So let's get to the news, and then we'll come back to the theme for today. So, Andrea, you kicking us off, right?
Yeah, all right. So we're going to go through the quick takes. And I
Mhm.
want to say I've been extremely jealous by all my friends, both in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, seeing the Aurora Borealis. Although apparently most people could only see it through their phone, so they couldn't actually see it.
Oh,
the
really?
pictures were spectacular. Yeah. The pictures were spectacular, but not everyone could actually see it. But obviously, the big breaking news this week was the assassination attempt of Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, and he's in a stable but serious condition. I think he was shot 5 times, once in the stomach. Initially, they didn't know what was going on, but I think it was like a 77-year-old lone wolf that carried out the attempted assassination. But one of the things that sort of I've been thinking about is this the beginning of a cycle of political assassinations, which kind of feels like it could be on the cards. What do you guys reckon?
Well, in terms of a contagion effect, a few of these things ever happen one at a time. There's always
Yeah.
a follow-up where someone kind of emboldened or inspired by an idea then goes like, oh, maybe I'll try something. So we'll see. I hope that cooler heads prevail as always.
Yeah.
And usually what happens is there's a boost in security as well. So that could at least maybe mitigate the actual occurrence, but there'll certainly be more of it on people's minds.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't have a
Some,
comment on the assassination, but I do have a comment on the auroras.
mm,
I think if you're living on the equator like we do, and you missed out, I think this Christmas would be a great time to go to Scandinavia, because nobody else is going to go there from the northern and the southern hemisphere. Have already seen it. They're going to cancel their bookings, so everything should be super cheap from a tourism perspective.
Nice.
well, that's certainly looking at the bright side of that.
Yeah,
There are more than 300 who are dead as floods hit the Afghanistan. According to reports, the floods happened so quickly, whole families were washed away in an instant. The provinces hit were Baghran, Badakhshan, I think it is, Badakhshan, I'm saying it wrong, Gore, and Western Herat. Residents said that they'd never experienced anything like that in their lives, except either from natural disasters that frequently hit the area or even the civil wars that have plagued the country.
Yeah. It's
it's
devastating.
terrible. Well, this is a bit weird when we've just been talking about assassinations and floods, but if you are a smashed avocado on toast kind of person, well,
Oh, come
an avocado
on. Smashed Avo.
smashed avo, yeah. If you kind of like it, well, avocado shortage warning has been issued as the fruit gets smashed by climate change. Curiously, did you know that one avocado needs 320 liters of water on average to grow, which is like crazy. That's a lot of baths, and as many as many of the growing regions are dealing with water shortages, this has become a really big deal. So maybe have your last smashed avo, and I think the keto diet people are going to have a real problem, although they're not having it on toast, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's become. No, it's great for what do you call those people, vegans, because it's a really good source of fat. But it's one of the new sort of crops that are being impacted by climate change, and that's happening more and more. All right, I thought this was a really fabulous message. So in the Atacama Desert in Chile, so that's where you can see the fast fashion landfill from space. It's been called the Global Sacrifice Zone for Used Fast Fashion. Activists and designers came together and organised a fashion show where they basically took clothes from the waste and sewed them into fashion items. And the goal was to raise awareness of the devastation to the land and the people that are living there. So the people that are living there, especially the activists, are at great danger from violence or even death if they speak up about it. So I thought this was a really, really cool and powerful message to get across.
Well, there's a man in the news for telling women to get back to the kitchen. He is Harrison Butker, the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. By the way, that's Taylor Swift's boyfriend's team. He delivered a commencement address, and in it, he basically said that the real fulfillment for women was to be at home. Venturing a guess out loud, quote, "The majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world," unquote. Turns out he was wrong, and the internet let him know in its usual reserved way.
Yeah, I know, and some of it's funny. Aussie Man Reviews did a good little take, but actually they're actually asking for him to step down in his role. So yeah, this is just starting this story.
You know, I mean, I don't think they should ask somebody like that to step down from their role. Honestly, I think you just got to not invite that sort of person to give those sorts of commencement addresses because they're a footballer. You got to invite somebody a bit more. You got to buy anybody else. You know, you got to do your research.
It should never be. They go like, "Oh, you're famous. Here's a mic."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the fact that you go, "Well, I've got stupid views," it's just like, well, then you better give up football. It's like, well, that's also a stupid view. You know,
that's good. Yeah, the cancelling, right? So let's look at it as a learning moment. You know, if you are a woman that wants to stay at home and raise your children and support your husband, that's totally cool. If you're a woman that wants to go out and change the world, that's totally cool too. It's there's not one role for any of us. And if we want to see human potential, then we need to unleash human potential, and it comes in all forms. And I think that's another side of things that women who choose to stay at home haven't felt respected for a long time. And I think that's another issue that needs to be addressed as well. Because whatever you want.
What he was trying to do, and I have some. When I listened, I did a bit more reading about what he was trying to do as well. Is he was bringing out a side of a very controversial thing in the wrong place to do it, right? So at a speech, where it's about trying to meet the general, you're supposed to be out there and giving a general sort of inspirational thing for the audience, to bring out something controversial as the core of it. That was really the problem. I think what he was talking about could have belonged somewhere in a panel discussion, and it would have led to some other interesting discussions. But you just can't be, you can't invade someone's birthday party and tell them a bad, sad story about Auntie Sue.
Although there was a big cheer from the audience, so it's a conservative Catholic institution. But I kind of sit there and think those women who've been at university for 4 or 5 years with an extraordinary amount of student debt behind them, and they're being told to go and stay in the kitchen. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. I think just wait about 4 months. There'll be a Taylor Swift song about it.
Yeah, go and listen to her commencement speech, though. That was pretty good.
Well, there's a new potential panic item, I guess. The deadly coronavirus has resurfaced. A version of it has resurfaced in Saudi Arabia, and that's MERS. Remember MERS? Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. Well, so far it's killed at least one patient, and which doesn't sound like time to sort of sound the siren per se, but it's there. It's been around since 2012. The thing about MERS is that it's got a 36% fatality rate, which is the danger sign for that one. But it's similar to the coronavirus, the COVID-19. So
So vaccinations must be pretty close, right? Like even the bird flu, I was reading, there's 75 years of vaccine history that could potentially tackle it. So as long as we're close to a vaccine, it should be okay.
My skeptical side is those need economies of scale. They need scale to warrant the pharmaceutical companies actually fixing it. Obviously, COVID-19 was global, and they could make a fortune from it. And that's a bit sad in that they could probably do it. But anyhow.
Yeah, it's more that they're already close. If you don't like snakes, they are on the move. So climate breakdown and it's funny, I've been wondering about snakes because snakes come out to seek heat. So you'll find them lying on concrete. We find cobras and all sorts of stuff on our concrete all the time, right? And they're beautiful, but they are on the move due to climate breakdown, and they're expecting a wide-scale or large-scale migration of venomous snake species into new regions that are unprepared. So Nepal, Nigeria, Namibia, China, and Myanmar will gain the most venomous snakes from neighboring countries under a heating climate. So a cold-blooded animal, it's even getting too hot for them, so they're going to move north.
Okay. Well, that's a nightmare in some people's idea of the world.
Yeah, but in
When
others, it's basically takeout food is arriving.
That's true. Tastes like chicken.
Oh man. Well, speaking of feathered friends, when I first read this story, I actually misread it. I was quite confused for a good second or two. I read it as hundreds of emancipated pelicans. Hundreds of emaciated pelicans have come up stranded in along the California coast. Now, the State Department of Fish and Wildlife says the brown pelicans are showing signs of malnutrition. But what's causing all of this is unclear. So I expect we'll get some updates about this story sometime down the road.
I'm not an expert, but I think malnutrition is usually linked to hunger.
Yeah, but
Yes,
specifically for them. Yeah. So the past time that it happened, it was the algal blooms on the water meant that they couldn't see their food below in the water.
They couldn't dive in and get the fish.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, another thing could potentially be plastic waste in their stomachs. Plastic waste. Right, and yes, third one could be overfishing, yeah. But I think it's the algal bloom, which will
there is an algae bloom there now?
They're still waiting to confirm the reasoning,
Okay.
but I don't know, it's just sad.
It's a fair guess. I mean, with the rising temperatures as well, that always helps the algae to get in trouble in the way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, did you know that there are more men called Richard or Dick, short for Richard, than there are women or diverse groups on U.S. corporate boards? That is, there's more people named Dick on U.S. corporate boards than there are women and diverse groups combined, which is crazy. So ELF Beauty, which is a mass beauty product range, stands for eyes, lips, and face. ELF Beauty has launched a new campaign challenging the status quo with the perfect tagline. I love this. So many dicks, so few of everyone else. And so, yeah, by the way, ELF Beauty is one of Motley Fool's recommendations as a buy.
Okay.
Just for you,
I hadn't
Joe.
come across them before.
All right, so let's get into some of the stories, get a bit deeper on some of the stories. Now, Elon Musk, if you may have noticed, is a little busy on X most times. And these days, he seems to be spending a lot of his brain time on Reuters. They published a series of articles that basically put him in some pretty bad light. Most of these have been around the mass firings of Tesla's supercharger stuff. By the way, if you're not familiar with that, it's basically what happened there was Elon Musk had already called for cuts in the company, and the CEO had come up, or not the CEO, sorry, the person in charge of the supercharger network had come up with some cuts, and apparently they were insufficient cuts. And when they pushed back on that, Elon Musk then fired her and her 500 team members. So that's led to a whole bunch of talk, and of course reporting by Reuters, and it doesn't make Musk look good at all, especially in the context of having this major discussion in the background of getting all the money that the board wants to reward him with, making him, giving him this huge payouts, and then at the same time talking about this huge layoffs that he's called necessary. That's basically what's I think that's what's got him, I guess, got a bee in his bonnet. I was looking to see if he was doing anything in terms of using the legal system at all. I couldn't find anything about that. So all of it happening on social media.
Yeah, I found that whole story about the charging stations. So basically, the reason the US is in the position it is because of that network of charging stations that have been built. You'd think for him, and I mean, they're getting massive investment from the government to keep going. The relationships that have been built, so you really look into it, it's the utility companies that they build relationships with, the infrastructure, the local governments. So he's just wiped out a very successful and probably like a competitive advantage for the company One of the reports, it sounded like it was like a very emotional decision when he fired that lady and the whole team. But surely, like, that's not going to help the EV sector move forward. Even though Ford, Toyota, all the others have basically said they're going to change their charging infrastructure to actually be able to go into the Tesla one. But as a business sort of decision, it comes across as like, what the hell?
If I'm a competitor, I'm picking up those experienced people and getting them to do what they've done really well.
Yeah, but you'd want to grab them all at once, right? Because it's that deep, wide network.
200 of them. Yep.
Well, not one of his finer moments. Then again, you have a lot to choose from these days.
Yeah. No, so keep an eye out on Reuters, because they really are going after him, and on Twitter, there's a lot of activity. So, Joe, I don't know if you're on Twitter anymore, but you'd find the conversation quite entertaining. I know everybody's off it, but one of my core communities.
I'll be honest. I've never really been attracted to Twitter because it's so noisy. And it was noisy before, and I understand that the flavor of the noise got worse after it became X. So there's even less attraction to the medium. But I do recognize that it is for a part of it anyway. It is the town square, but they're just letting a lot more people into it nowadays.
Yeah, I think those of us who are there know better. So your algorithms start to feed what you participate with, and so a lot of the ugly stuff, I don't see it. It might pop up every now and again, but the quality of the information shared there, and the climate scientists who are active there, that's my best chance of keeping up with what they're sharing. So it's not as bad as everyone thinks. The US election is obviously coming up in November, and I think it's keeping everyone on the edge of their seats. But if you're,
I bought my tickets.
Yeah. Front row too. If you're paying attention to the enormous challenges that the world is now facing, there's one outcome that would be an absolute disaster for the world. Honestly, if it happens, I'll just be putting my hands up, and that is, of course, Donald Trump being re-elected. I have so far sort of looked at the whole situation and thought, it's not going to happen. But this week, there's been some stuff. So first of all, in the Atlantic, the battleground states that will shape the election. And basically polling is showing that Biden is falling behind Trump in these key states. So they are Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. And Biden won all 6 of those in the last election, which is why he was able to get enough votes. So if you actually want to learn how to watch the elections, it's a pattern that emerges. But if those states go majority red or majority blue, you basically know who's won the election before it's even officially announced. So Biden doesn't need them all. If he just gets Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, he can get 270 electoral votes. But what this polling is showing is that he's got some challenges ahead in winning those votes. And there's lots of reasons for it. But Trump is a disaster in many, many ways. There's so many good articles coming out on him at the moment, but especially from an environment perspective. So in the last week, he's announced that he will promise to scrap all offshore wind projects on day one of his presidency. But the bigger one was he's basically said he will scrap all climate laws if US oil bosses donate $1 billion to his re-election campaign.
I mean, so if he fails to win it, does he keep the billion?
Yeah, well, he knows what he's going to do with that money, right? So basically, The Guardian says Donald Trump dangled a brazen deal in front of some of the top US oil bosses last month, proposing the $1 billion if he gets re-elected, and vowing that once back in office, he would instantly tear up Joe Biden's environmental regulations and prevent any new ones. So he made this jaw-dropping pitch at Mar-a-Lago in front of 20 oil executives from Chevron, Exxon, Occidental Petroleum, and more. And he's promised to increase oil drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, remove hurdles to drilling in the Alaskan Arctic, and reverse rules designed to cut car pollution. So he'd also overturned the Biden administration's decision in January to pause new natural gas export permits, which have been denounced as climate bombs. So basically, there's a lot of ethical sort of things going around this, and there's one saying that this potentially could rise to the standard considered legal bribery.
Yep.
But regardless, like, that's not the world that we're in right now. That's not the sort of leadership that we require right now. And we've got to make sure that never happens. We cannot afford a Trump in the White House.
I didn't think a candidate was allowed to do that.
Yeah, well, that's.
I mean, it's like, it's like you said, it's blatant.
Well, if there's one thing we know, that he's blatant. We also know about the shape and size of his penis, and I just find that really, really disturbing. What we're listening to at the moment, this whole court case, I'm like, ugh, it's revolting.
It's an excellent segue into garbage lasagnas.
But Joe was going to say something first.
Garbage.
Well,
lasagnas.
I was going to say that there is a lot, for me, a lot of potential in this, in the sense that, in the way that what's happened with Roe v. Wade has become a real knife at the back, in a knife that the Republicans are having to deal with, because they dealt this card and then it's come back to bite them, right? This could actually be the thing that could help in winning back the youth vote, because what Biden is actually having a real problem with now is reaching the youth, because what he's doing seems to be irrelevant to them, right? And if they play this card correctly, where you have someone outwardly being very blatant about this and saying, like, I'm prepared to completely sell you out, this could bring the youth back. I think this is really this is the youth's abortion.
Yeah. I think another thing that's going to happen between now and the election is the extreme weather events. So I think it was just yesterday, Florida, the Keys hit 115 degrees Fahrenheit wet bulb temperatures, which is the record heat in May, and the hottest is obviously June, July, August. Houston just got hammered by extreme weather overnight, and like the oil company buildings, the skyscrapers in Houston, their windows have been smashed, big electrical towers have fallen over. Like, it's really big. This is just happening sort of in the last 24 hours. But we haven't even moved into the summer, the extreme of this summer that's coming. And we saw what happened last year, especially in Arizona. But what's coming is predicted this year is a hurricane season off the charts. I mean, Ron DeSantis has just signed into law that you don't use the term climate change in any official government documents. There's no push to get employees to drive, electric vehicles. But the reality on the ground, that could also change. But then the other, of course, the big issue is RFK's in the mix. So if he goes a bit batshit crazy, there's a chance that will harm him and harm Trump. But the other thing is, what was it? The war in Israel.
I think
huge.
if there's anything that is holding back Biden currently, it is the war in Israel. That is the linchpin kind of thing that is keeping the youth vote away from him. And he's running a very, very narrow kind of a path to try and get to them. He's pulled back quite a bit in terms of what he's willing to do now. In Gaza, in Israel. I mean, with regards to Gaza in Israel, and to the point that Donald Trump actually now is coming on the other side, and Donald Trump's the one now calling for weapons to be provided for and all these different things. So it's going to be interesting how it's played. And the problem really, I think what's very interesting we've kind of like gone off the track here, but what's really very interesting for me is the potential for the Biden camp to take back the reins in terms of the narrative, because of where the youth are getting their news and their stories. Yes, Trump and camp are all used to the idea of it happening on Fox News and reaching that part of the audience, but they're not as connected in the other areas where the youth are hanging out. So there's a potential of it going the right way in that way as well. And in terms of, I think, the outreach that's going out, the interviews that have been put out there, there's something happening. It's not going to be something that's going to be a switch that happens immediately, but I think the trajectory is it's begun to turn, and it's sort of beginning to move in the direction. I think what happened, and this is me speaking way past my way above my pay grade here. But what happened in 2016, when you talk about polling and what people give you in responses in terms of what they feel, I think that same thing is happening now, but with Joe Biden being the dark horse that people are not realizing is making gains in those areas amongst people that are not going to answer surveys. So there is that as well.
Yeah, we don't have a good track record of polling in the last couple of US elections in particular. So yeah, I agree with that.
Well, yeah, they still use. I mean, if as long as polling is based on landlines, which it still remarkably is,
Yeah.
The numbers have to be off.
Yeah. I think the other problem I think that I'm observing in the U.S. elections pretty much is when you're voting in people in their late 70s, you would think that as a political party you would be investing heavily in succession planning and overt succession planning, that the VP is capable and seen as highly capable as taking on the top job in the next election, even if the incumbent stays for 2 terms, that they can take the third. But it rarely happens. And it seems to me that Biden is not reaching the youth in one sense, unless Joe's assertions on polling and not reaching those that he's actually making gains with. But I just feel that there's an out of touchness and a perception of grandpa can't handle the job kind of feel. And I just sense that they typically pick safe VPs rather than potential president. And then that VP invariably runs for president and loses, usually.
Yeah, it's a weak position, right? But I think Kamala Harris, I don't think she gets a lot of, I don't think she's getting fair media coverage. She gets a lot of criticism. But if you actually see a lot of the social media commentary, you see a lot more sort of the things that she's doing and the impact she's making, but you're not necessarily through the media.
But for that to work well, the president has to be standing next to the vice president and they're making joint statements all the time. If you're really looking at succession planning, it's got to be a bit of that. Because if it's one and then the other one's over here saying something really interesting as well, then the media is just going to focus on the president.
Yeah.
So if they want to put that person forward, and a great leader is developing their succession plan, they're not going to leave and the whole thing collapses or they lose power because of that. You're developing the next solid leader. So, and you're making sure that person gets a lot of airtime so that the public are confident in their ability to be able to do the job. I mean, look what happened,
Long-term vision. It's something lacking in the West.
Certainly lacking in the West. I mean, Singapore's just got a new PM, so
yeah. And how long was that in the plans, right?
Been in the plans for a while, and even when the plans changed, there was a lot of exactly that putting forward of capability and fronting the show, So anyway,
garbage lasagna.
Yeah, let's go to garbage lasagna. So
on today's menu, we've got some garbage lasagna. Here's Chef Tim with the details.
I'm not sure if you're a vampire or Russian.
Yeah.
Please. I don't know. Have you heard the term garbage lasagna before? I kind of love it.
No.
First time I've heard it.
I've never heard it before. But basically, a study has found that garbage lasagnas are forming in open landfills. Basically, layers and layers of garbage are forming in open landfills across the US, and they're releasing a staggering amount of air pollution. These US landfill dumps are releasing almost 3 times more methane than estimates from the Environmental Protection Agency indicate. It's a discovery that could have major implications for both the climate and the communities. Basically, if they're releasing methane, there's a lot of organic waste in there just rotting away. So over use of, wasted food, things like that as well. By flying planes over roughly 20% of the nation's 1,200 large open landfills, researchers discovered that over half had sizable methane plumes, which sometimes lasted for months or years. This suggests that something has gone awry at these sites, such as big leaks of trapped methane from layers of long buried decomposing trash. A lead researcher said you can sometimes get decades of trash that's sitting under the landfill, and we call it a garbage lasagna. When our vegetable scraps and old appliances end up buried in landfills, they decompose without oxygen, and that releases methane. And methane is a potent warming gas. It is over a 20-year period, its warming effect is a whopping 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. So so the EPA has already considers landfills the third largest source of human-caused methane pollution in the United States, equal to the yearly emissions of 23 million cars. But if landfills are emitting nearly triple previous estimates, the threat to our communities and climate is far greater than we realized. Wherever we live in the world, we need a composting revolution. We all need to be composting our food waste, or minimizing the food waste altogether, rather than trashing it, so we can keep methane-emitting organics out of landfills. When we compost, we turn food scraps into nutrient-rich soil. And look, I think there's two other things here. There's some cultural elements on feasting that we need to also look at, and also personal preparation of food. The feasting idea from a cultural perspective that you might want to consider as well is this whole idea of leaving some food at the end to show the host that you're full. And that means that that's effectively going to get thrown away and end up in landfill because of a cultural appropriate amount of wastage, and that multiplied out can end up in landfill. And the other one is, of course, over preparing at home, which I'm sometimes guilty of, but it ends up in the fridge, not in the bin, unless it ends up in the fridge for 3 weeks and then it ends up in the bin. But what I've done more recently is I've undercooked, and I've had stuff in the fridge that is a go-to if for some reason I'm still hungry. But more often than not, after a few minutes, I'm fine.
I was a bit scared for you there when you said undercooked, as in you cooked less.
Yes, not undercooked. Yes, okay. Yeah. Well, if it's undercooked, I can lose some of that weight.
Yeah, exactly. South Korea is an example. 99% of households in South Korea compost. They made it a national priority, and it's really brought community back together. So it's a really beautiful example of it being a positive. UK is fantastic for collecting food waste, but worldwide but individually, just nothing organic should go into landfill, into your waste. So, and that's not just food; it's paper, it's cardboard. There's lots of different things. So if we can all understand that and then actively work to make sure that we're not putting food waste into landfill, 6 to 8% of global emissions come from food waste.
It's crazy.
And then we have the methane release from landfills from food waste. So
what would be interesting is
we've got to do the work. Oh.
What percent was coming from food waste?
6 to 8%.
8%. That's a crazy amount.
Agriculture, food production is like 35% of global emissions. So, but yeah, 6 to 8%. It's very high, and that's not just from our tables; it's from farm to table. So it's ugly fruit, not just food that just doesn't make it on the journey. All that sort of stuff.
Yep.
We could feed the world with all the food waste.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I've always talked about how we talk about food in the world. It's actually it's not a production problem; it's a logistics problem, right? It's something that can be figured out if we figure it out. Because on a daily basis, I think there's more food wasted than there is food that is. It's more than the deficit that really we have every day in some countries.
Yeah, waste. The concept of waste in all its forms. That's what we need to address.
Well, it's also something which I've found. I'm taking inspiration from my helper, right? We have a helper, and she she's actually come up with something very remarkable in terms of food planning, and she's not so good with it when it comes to the food that we have in our family. She doesn't practice it with us as the family, but she also has a food business. On the weekends she does sell to her country folks in Singapore as well. And she really is accurate with the amount of stuff she needs to buy and prepare, so that when she's done with the food preparation and what is sold, it is almost to the last drop. Everything is accounted for, and that's as far as it goes. And I just thought about this in terms of what we don't usually do is try to plan to that level. We tend to say, okay, we want to have too much instead of too little. We're always afraid of not enough, and therefore we overdo it. For practical reasons, sometimes also because we want to make a social statement. You know, when you're having a party, you want to have more. You know, so it's an interesting concept. I mean, from just watching her do it, and the motivations for her are also because she's trying to keep her business tight. She doesn't want to waste money, not so much the food. But I think it's a great concept.
Yeah, I see a lot of that in Thailand.
Mm.
That mindset around food. It's not wasteful. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
let's talk about something that sounds like a really good idea, right? Saudi Arabia wants to diversify its economy. It looks at the future and it says, no, what we're doing right now maybe not going to work. So by 2030, they want to diversify how they live and use energy as well. So this is where the NEOM project comes in. The NEOM project is Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030 project. And part of it, of course, is the energy perspective, or at least how energy will be generated. And also, of course, there is water. Water is the big one in that part of the world. Water is it's such a hard to come by commodity in Saudi Arabia that they actually import. They import. The problem is actually in the U.S., where there's a shortage of water because it's been put aside for crops and animals that are being brought up agriculturally for Saudi Arabia. So that's how much of a problem they have.
Alfalfa.
Perhaps avocados as well, yeah. But
Alfalfa's a big one.
So one of the big solutions was going to be solar water. That's basically, you know, a means to get water. I mean, from the sea, a desalination process basically, and it's supposed to be based on green energy. And the big news is that the CEO of Solar Water has cancelled the contract with Saudi Arabia to do their work for NEOM. Now, it's significant because this is not a small contract. It's $100 million contract. And the reason that he's canceled the contract is because the CEOs found out that in order to make room or to prepare for this for NEOM, what Saudi Arabia has been doing is forcibly clearing the land, forcibly to the point where I mean, these are in quotes, so we'll leave it there. Ordered to kill people who resist eviction in this particular project. So that is, to me, one of the rare occasions where we've heard the word CEO and doing the right thing in the same sentence. You know, perhaps it's also about just what is viable in the world today in terms of where can you draw the line in terms of what is an acceptable association. Yeah, so maybe it's just too close. Maybe it's just too close to home. You know, I think many times we do things because we go like, well, is there a chance no one's going to find out about this? And I think sometimes with stuff like this, there's just no way it's not going to come and bite you back in the bum. And someone's made a choice.
Yeah, the line was an interesting turn of phrase, because I don't know if you've seen what this place is going to look like. It's very narrow, but then it goes for 170 kilometers or something like that. I honestly, I haven't seen anything that says how that city is going to survive in the extreme heat that's coming. Like, I haven't seen anything about that, because it's just we're going to be 60, 70 degrees. And how are they preparing for that? Like, is it even a possibility? There's so many dreams out there, but are they even a possibility based on the reality of what's on the way? That's one thing that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I don't know enough about NEOM to say much about it, but I can only just draw from what I've seen in future looking projects that have been done, like let's say in Malaysia, where they're trying to meet the future, ahead of time. I again, like, I don't know what they've done about the heat, but I tend to imagine that for the Saudis, they're working on the default is we're working on the heat. I mean, for them, they have to they have to deal with that, and they try to do that. So I'm not sure if it's going to be front and center if the Saudis, if Saudi Arabia were to do something about heat, just that's per se. I mean, I don't think they'd say it out in the news, is it? Because it's kind of the thing that is below the line. I think for Saudi Arabia, water is a big thing, and maybe diversification of energy. But for them, I think heat's been a problem before, and I think it might not feature front and center in terms of what they're saying they'll be doing, because I think as a baseline, and this is me just, again, I'm guessing that for them it is a daily thing that they would want to build for or design for.
Well, Florida's current temperature is 17 degrees above normal. So when you say that not planning or not talking about heat, like, it's got to be at the center of every conversation, especially heat impacted regions, right? But anyway, I find this whole thing fascinating. But so there's a lot going on in the climate space. I mean, obviously we've seen the terrible floods in Brazil, and it hasn't finished. Do you know that state is the size of the UK and it's underwater? So it's fascinating. Some other ones. 1 in 8 Europeans now live in areas at risk of extreme floods. Mexico is going through a massive heat wave, which is also the heat dome that's being impacting Florida, and 10 cities, including Mexico City, which is about to run out of water, are under this heat dome. And this is extreme temperatures for May. We're seeing the wildfires in Canada and massive evacuations. And again, there's concern that people are just going to start saying, well, this is just normal, but it's not normal to see fires of this scale in Canada in May. Older people are more likely to die from heat, and we're seeing that. 40 people are dying in Burma at the moment a day from heat stroke. Thailand's recorded 60 deaths, but who knows what it is. But anyway, older people are more at risk, and CO2 levels are off the charts, and they're higher than they've been in millions of years. But a really, really big focus for the last 12 months, 14 months is ocean heat. And there's a few different articles that I'm going to include in the weekend reads, but this one I'm referencing is in the BBC: hurricanes, heat waves, and rising seas. So what are the impacts going to be? And so the first thing, the most important thing, is to understand that the scientists don't understand why this is happening. That's the most important thing. There's, in February 2024, the world breached 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming for the first full year. So in 9 years, so it's going to be a 10-year cycle, we will officially be above 1.5. However, what they're seeing in the atmosphere is what they were expecting at 3 degrees Celsius global warming, which I think is a very, very, very interesting perspective. So scientists are terrified. Why is it happening? Well, of course, greenhouse gas emissions, El Nino are being blamed. We had the big Tonga volcanic eruption, which sent all this water up into the stratosphere. But the really interesting thing about that recently was apparently that should have been an Earth cooling event, not a heating event. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting, right? And of course, the sulfur reduction from shipping fuel. So these are all the different things. So what are the impacts going to be? So extreme hurricane seasons, especially because we're in a La Nina year where there's more moisture in the air. So we could be seeing our first 6 category, which now is official. Warm air holds more moisture. So for every 1 degree of warming, you get 7% more moisture in the air. So that's going to increase rainfall. So we're going to see more storms. The speed of storm intensification. So where was it? In somewhere in Acapulco, got absolutely slammed, and it was a hurricane that basically it went down to like a 1 or a 2, and then within a couple of hours it went up to a 5 and basically wiped out the city. More warmer warmer what do you call them? Warmer oceans also produce more unicorn type heat events and new types or new classes of heat waves. So we've all just basically gone through 3 months of really, really extreme heat wave. But it's obviously not just on the surface or on the land, it's underwater too. We're seeing the massive coral die-offs and bleaching all around the world from Australia to Tanzania. And the other thing is, of course, we're going to see more oxygen depletion zones, which is going to wipe out fish, but it also stops the nutrients mixing up and moving down in water, and that's going to impact the basis of the food web, which is phytoplankton. So that obviously has ripple effects. So there's a lot of things going on. Of course, the other one is rising seas. So warm water expands. So we've got Greenland melting. We've got the Arctic and Antarctica melting. All the glaciers are melting around the world. Venezuela has now lost all of its glaciers to melting. So, but the water expands, and when you understand the energy required, so when you put a kettle on and you boil it and look at how long it takes to heat up, so the entire world's oceans are heating up. So the amount of energy required to achieve that is pretty extraordinary. And so, of course, the other one is the AMOC, which is the Atlantic Meridional Occidental Current, or overturning circulation, depending on which one you use. So if the AMOC goes, and it's predicted it could stop and collapse by 2025, it'll send the entire Northern Hemisphere into an ice age, and it will also basically wipe out the Amazon. I haven't been able to really get to grips with what happens to the equatorial region of the world. Apparently, it will cause explosive heat fairly instantly, but I need to get, I'm going to try and find an expert who I can talk to about that. So a lot of big things coming up. So whatever we've been seeing, we're going to see more and more extreme weather events coming up until we wake up as a species and decide it's worth tackling this and giving it a go to reverse some of it. We're not going to change all of it, but we can reverse some of it.
So you're saying let's visit Spain while we can?
Yeah, that's diversification. Desertification is happening there. Spain.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the Mediterranean, basically.
Yeah. Well, it was supposed to be a funnier line than that, but I mean, I
Oh, no, but I mean, even Bangkok are looking at moving the capital. I shared that yesterday, right? So Indonesia's already moving Jakarta. That's already started, but now Bangkok because of sea level rise. You know. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was listening to this, and I just thought one thing. I said the problem with everything you're saying is that it's happening too slowly. You know, and it's one of those things where, you know, because of the creep, you know, we're comfortable with it. But if there wasn't the creep, if it was more urgent, if it was happening, you know, in real time or in a more urgent sort of way, we pay more attention to it.
Sorry.
But it's because of the Trump again, because, you know, like what you've described, there, like you said, it's coming in fairly quickly, right? And I think what people tend to do is frame it in their own time scale. And if you say something that it's coming soon, like you know, I guess it's there is when you say something is coming soon and people begin to go like, I sort of believe you. So right now, if we say Christmas is coming soon, it's a little bit early for people to think it's conceivable, it's true, but it's a long way away. And if I say I have to plan for that, it won't happen. I know, like myself and how I deal with deadlines, it gets to the point, even very responsible people like people who are pastors trying to put together important assignments, it still catches up with you because some timeline or some ideas of it, that they're just too far down the road, and we don't see it as the thing that's happening. Like when one thing happens or that thing happens, it's like, is this it? Or is it just a little bit of a swing? Is this just a hot day? And so it becomes possible for things to be interpreted because there's enough ambiguity in it, and I know for you there's none, because you can see, like, it's so clear, this is what's happening because of this today. This is not normal compared to 5 years ago. But I think not enough people are doing that kind of comparison. I mean, for me, what's really changed in terms of how I look at the weather now is because I used to do the weather every day on the radio. And I used to talk about what the weather was in Singapore and what the temperature range was. And I can say it has changed. It really, really has changed significantly. We would have days before with the weather range, the temperature range of 24 to 27. We had temperatures where it was a bit cooler, and maybe on a really hot day, it was 31 or 32, and it's just not the same anymore. So it's about that. It's about that perspective. It's about things happening. So for me, really, it is about things happening too slowly, and we need to figure out a way for people to see things in the future in quick time, and then they can go like, okay, that's the first thing that's going to happen. They're going to go like, okay, now I begin to accept it and think this is the reality of it. And the next thing which is tricky about it.
So I just think, Joe, I just think it's the wrong way to look at it, and that's what we've been looking at it for a long time. So first of all, I totally agree with you. The last 20 years, it's been clear to me that what's going on is going on, and it's like, oh my God, the longer we wait, the worse this is going to get. The idea that we had to wait to see it before we acted, we had to be impacted by it before we changed anything, to me was one of the greatest disasters, because we've already gone too far. We needed to do this 20, 30 years ago, right? And what we needed was our political leaders, business leaders, the media, to educate the public about what would happen if we didn't get our ducks in a row, and they didn't do it. So now that we're here at this extreme point where it's only going to start getting faster, and I think the speed that you're talking about, I think in the next 12 months we'll see it. By August, if the oceans haven't cooled down, we're moving into a new climate, and we're going to have to adjust to that, right? So that's basically what the science is saying. So I think we're already moved into the speed. But the need to see the evidence before our eyes before we act is the most stupid thing that humanity has ever done. So
we're not the brightest when it comes to a lot of these things.
So the need to see the evidence before we act. And I'm studying theology. So the from a I get what you're saying, Andrea. I think there's two things here. I think one of them is what is our I think what Joe is saying is what is our personal narrative, and how is our personal narrative being challenged by the evidence at hand? Because we will tend to hold fast to that personal narrative, whatever we've chosen to believe at some point. So, for example, with climate change, it's like, my personal narrative is, it's just the sun cycle, or it's happened like this over eons, and the world's always gone through hots and colds, and it's just part of that, and it's all scaremongering from politicians to get us to do something or vote in a particular way, or it's all news trying to sell papers and whatever. And it's certainly a bit of that. It's usually there's bits of truth that support whatever our foundational belief is. It's the frustration, I think, that Andrea you're saying is, I mean, that scientists were saying this from the 70s, saying this is going to happen.
50s.
And they've been exactly right.
Yeah, I was going to say the 50s.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's I think fundamentally it comes down to when you said the media should be educating people and this and this. The media is an organism that is got its own self-interest at heart. Certainly the media that is controlled by individuals who are looking at profiteering rather than governments to a degree that are looking at the interests of their people. So then you've got this sort of decision to make. Do you want your media in the hands of a benevolent group that is that has the best interests of the people, you would think, right? Which is supposed to be government, but you may argue based on our political news and commentary that those people don't have the best interests of the people anymore? Or do you want the media in the hands of individual tycoons who wrestle over ego and profitability? So, and I think there's, I guess that's why we have the No Show, right? That we're trying to present information in a particular way that is there to get people to sort of think about it without any sort of personal vested interest. Particularly, it's just more that, hear this. What are you going to do about it? So I think we're caught in a culture of individualism and individual profitability, where the world needs a bigger picture thinking that is global and that has some leadership that can impact that global change, I suppose. But our political systems aren't set up to do that at this point. And the people that we're electing have a lot of small interest at heart. They've got their own career and they've got their party. That seems to be their priority more so than the country. And those idealists that come in with the country at heart get thrown out and eaten and end up in garbage lasagnas because their idealism is ridiculed by the trumpets.
Yeah. So what you've just explained is the fundamental problem that we're dealing with at the moment on a global scale, right? So the politicization of science, like people who believe in it and people who don't. It's like, this isn't a belief. This is science. And they're conservative. They're not even radical. So what they're saying, I listen to some of them and, I've been saying for a long time, this is going to happen a lot faster. And everyone's looking at me like, well, how do you know? And I'm like, because I'm looking at all of it, but also I'm looking at the information that doesn't even exist yet and identifying big gaps, right? So soil is its release of carbon, CO2. It's not even in the IPCC report. Methane release from permafrost isn't even in the IPCC report. So the lack of information is information too, right? But the politicization, this should never have been a conversation. This should never have been a discussion. Like, there is no benefit. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's like I'm always trying to figure out how the hell do we ever get here? The Murdoch media continuing with its story. And you're like, but he's got children, he's got grandchildren. What the hell? What's the benefit there? Bezos, with
but they're rich enough. They're rich enough to get on the ark and sail around the world.
Yeah,
while
but
everything is in turmoil.
In a dead ocean. Like, if you look at where the CO2, the parts per million, is now, the last time it was that high, and it's never gone that high in such a short period of time. It goes up gradually over like a couple of thousand years. It's just shot up in this very short 200-year period. And the last time it was that high was when we had single cell amoeba. And that was it. Do they really think they're going to survive on an ocean where, it's bubbling and like we don't even know the physics of what's coming, and because it's energy balance, right? If you do this, this happens. If you do this, this happens.
Yeah.
And
it's causation. Yeah. There's a lot of causation, and there's, I mean, this is probably
lack of imagination.
They're starving.
Yeah. Oh, it's all linked, right?
All right. Shall we move on?
Sure.
All right. Well, there's an interesting article in Grist. And this is a young Microsoft employee, Holly Alpine, was leading a program that invests in environmental projects in the communities where Microsoft's data centers are located. She also helped organize a worker-led sustainability group called the Sustainability Connected Community, which would grow to nearly 10,000 Microsoft employees worldwide by late 2023. By the end of last year, Alpine reached a painful decision. She could no longer ethically work at Microsoft. On January the 24th this year, Alpine sent an email to Microsoft President Brad Smith, CEO Satya Nadella, and several other senior company officials, letting them know why. Writing on behalf of herself and a colleague who resigned at the same time, Alpine told the tech giant's top brass that the two were quitting in no small part due to Microsoft's work for the fossil fuel industry aimed at automating and accelerating oil extraction. This work to maximize oil production with our technology is negating all of our good work, extending the age of fossil fuels and enabling untold emissions, Alpine wrote in the email. We are both deeply saddened to be so let down by a company we love so much. Alpine's blunt resignation letter didn't come out of nowhere. For years, she was one of the faces of an internal employee-led effort to raise ethical concerns about Microsoft's work, helping oil and gas producers boost their profits by providing them with cloud computing resources and AI software tools. Former Microsoft employees and sources familiar with the tech industry advocacy say that, broadly speaking, employee pressure has had an enormous impact on sustainability at Microsoft, encouraging it to announce industry-led climate goals in 2020 and support key federal climate policies. But convincing the world's most valuable company to forego lucrative oil industry contracts proved far more difficult. Eventually, Alpine decided speaking up internally wasn't enough. By speaking up publicly, despite her concerns about legal risks, Alpine hopes to place additional pressure on her former employer to address the emissions it is enabling through technology partnerships with fossil fuel companies. Quote, the energy transition is complex and requires moving forward in a principled manner. We believe that technology has an important role to play in helping the industry decarbonize, and that requires balancing the energy needs and industry practices of today while inventing and deploying those of tomorrow, the spokesperson added. And we continually monitor our own emissions, accelerate progress while increasing our use of clean energy to power data centers, purchasing renewable energy, and other efforts to meet our sustainability goals of being carbon negative, water positive, and zero waste by 2030. Over the past 7 years, Microsoft has announced dozens of new deals with oil and gas producers and oil field services companies, many explicitly aimed at unlocking new reserves, increasing production, and driving up oil industry profits. It's a great article, worth digging into, pun intended. And while it feels like a failure, it really does focus on the importance of employee pressure within big corporations.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, good on her for standing up and putting her name down to it. But I saw just recently, Microsoft's always had some very ambitious targets, and we're going to be climate neutral well ahead of everybody else. But now it looks like that's not going to happen. Their emissions are going up significantly, and a lot of that's because of AI. So just AI will potentially mean that Microsoft can't achieve its goals. So it's not just the fossil fuel industry business, it's also the AI business.
Yep. This one is also a cause and effect and a dynamic systems play, because with AI, the possibilities are phenomenal, but the energy required at this level of AI development, and it seems to be only the big guns will be the ones that really lead this charge, which is why share prices of the Magnificent Seven seem to be doing so well. But it's that investment now to create this thing that seems to be mind-blowingly revolutionary, and could have some solutions that come out of it and allow creative solutions for global problems in a far quicker time, to be fair. Does require energy at this point that perhaps the sustainable energy sources can't provide.
We haven't got it. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where they are also caught in competitive commercial pressures, where if they pull back to try and get the sustainable stuff happening, others will just step in and take the charge, and they lose their position of dominance and ability to influence global outcomes. So it's like this, the only way, which is an unrealistic ideal way, the only way that the world can do this is to get together and agree we will play by the rules, and the agreed rules for the safety of the world are these. But who enforces the rules? We don't have any global referee, other than the odd sanctions and the you didn't play fair and I'm going to attack you. So we're caught basically in a game of football where everyone writes their own rules. Some of them can pick up the ball and run with it. Some of them can tackle. Some are trying to live by the you can only pass backwards, and half the people are standing offside. So, some are kicking it over the goal for 6 points. Some are kicking it in the net for 1. Others think that they can kick it past the main post and get a point. And then there's no referee on the pitch, and every team has got a different number of players, and they're all playing at the same time. So it's like it's absolute
basically,
chaos.
Yeah. And no one's being transparent. Nobody really knows what's going on behind the scenes. Transparency is required on such a level. Look, what we need to operate in a way we've never operated before as a global society, or we accept collapse. So this whole artificial intelligence thing, it's like, yeah, we can do all that stuff, and or we can build a better society, but we can't do it all. We can't have, but like the amount of energy required by the tech to support AI, we don't have it in a sustainable way. We don't have it, and it's not close. And everyone's on their ChatGPT asking questions and designing images, and it's all taking up more and more energy. The Pacific Northwest is already suffering potential energy blackouts because of data center needs. How's that going to go in the heat when the extreme heat sweeps across the region?
So I think there is a solution to that one. I mean, the logical thing, typically what happens in the tech world is that you give it to everybody for free, everybody's hooked, and then you start charging them for it. I mean, that's not a good diversity play, because there's a lot of people in the world who should have access to this technology who can't pay for it. So the unbanked, the people without credit cards, I would like to hope that they can still have access to all of this technology, because they might be, and everything else as well. So
exactly,
yeah. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the solution is.
The challenge for me, actually, when I was listening to the story, actually, I know that I probably stand in the room by myself again on this, but I kind of feel what she's doing is wrong, and here's why. It's about it's part of the big overall solution. I feel like sometimes really, really big companies are almost like when you run a very big company, you're running families, right? And it's not always going to be as simple as saying we agree with everything everybody in the family is doing, but I think in a bigger picture perspective, one powers the other sometimes. Profits from one area actually help you do something else as well. And it's all a little bit distorted. I recognize that. But again, what Tim was saying earlier, if you don't do it, then somebody else will. Is that really a way to try and solve a problem? I mean, if you're trying to solve a problem, if you're engaged with the problem maker, even if you're enabling them in the process, you maybe have that relationship that you can try and do something about. It's challenging, it's difficult, and it's distasteful, but at the same time, I think you have to look at the I think you look at the whole big picture. I mean, for instance, if you go like, you know what, we're so upset with the way XYZ government is doing things, we are just breaking off relations, and then in walks in the other government, totally different values and all that, and they say, okay, we'll do it. I mean, you can insert your own replacements here to that story. That's the price. That's the other side of things that we sometimes maybe aren't thinking about, right? I mean, that really, this what you've described here is the same problem for which I don't have the solution, but I have the perspective for you to appreciate why it's that much of a problem that Israel faces today. Israel and the allies and the people that support Israel that don't and see the other side. This is the problem. There is obviously an undesirable situation. It's not great that the world is what it is right now, but how do we get to the other side of it? And it seems like, yes, absolutely, if I just do this and do this, and if I just do the things that I absolutely have to do, that will happen, right? And what you're describing is basically the finger snap by Thanos. Great.
Well, the finger snap by Thanos is going to happen.
Yes.
Well, no, the thing about this is that's the difficult choice that we sort of kind of you kind of think, okay, well, that's the kind of choice that would work, and if it's a difficult choice that I had to do, I would make it happen. But then there's also this thing about the cost of all this stuff that's going to happen, right? The moment of a pivotal change of anything, um, if you look at what happened when they when Henry Ford invented uh, the 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 production line, right? When he invented the production line, he was radically changing the way people worked, businesses worked, and all the different things that went along the way. And there were going to be people who were going to be put out of jobs. He was going to destroy a lot of things. Um, the change eventually was going to happen after a long time, and people would settle into a new a way
Paradigm.
of doing things, and then we find a rhythm again, right? But it's one of those things where if you had the choice, if you were in charge, if you really had just your perspective and looking at the welfare of everyone, would you say to Thomas Edison, please release the light bulb, or please let's have computers? Would you say let's not have the internet? Would you
I
say
mean, okay, so that argument though, Joe, is predicated on the fact that you need a benevolent
oh no?
organization whose values are clearly global positive and not just greenwashing and everything else. So it's and I agree that, I mean, if I was, emperor of the world,
Mhm.
then I feel like my values would trickle down into the decisions that are made, and I would have to be drilling for oil to keep the world going, while we're investing heavily in the alternative solution. So it's like we're going to use the profits. I mean, that would be we're going to use the profits from this uh, enablement with these companies that are also putting profits from this into the next generation of possibility. I mean, just those sorts of conversations aren't happening quite. So
Yep. Yep.
You can't look
Uh,
at this. You can't look at this with the same eyes as the problem. What got us here is going to get us out of it, right? You can't. So
Yeah.
what we're actually looking for. So I think this young lady is very brave, and I'm sure she's done everything she could possibly do. And then in the last 12 months, she's seen a massive swing around at Microsoft in the other direction against what she's been fighting for a really long time. So I get her motivation for
Yep.
standing up. But if you really look at this, like what we need to do is shrink the global business community by about 80%.
I mean, that's never going to happen, right?
Right.
It's
But
never
if we
going to happen
don't,
except in market forces with a global collapse.
but if we don't, are we willing to suffer the consequences, which is
So if you
collapse?
did a poll
So
of the
either way,
entire world and you said, how many people here would like to tighten your belt for the next 20 years? Your dreams are gone, but this is for the good of your grandchildren.
that's
You would
so
get a small percentage saying yes, it would not be passed.
yeah.
And so what people would do instead is say, well, if a collapse is coming, I'm going to grab more for myself and hoard and make sure that we can get through the people close to me. And I think that's where we're going to be heading.
But nobody is anywhere on the planet guaranteed to survive that, right?
But people will try and control, and they will control their sphere of control. And those people who think that they've got control, who are the ones making a lot of these decisions anyway, are just going to hoard. And so they're going to invest in the oil and those things to create the wealth that can perhaps try to save them. That's what they're thinking. It's going to be, I'm going to save myself. Self-salvation.
There's not going to be any stock market in a collapsed world. So you can
But
put all
there
your money
will be
into
for now.
stocks.
So I'm going to grab as much as I can now. I mean,
Sure. But you know what I mean? So it's just people just aren't thinking through. It's like people can't. They just don't know how to. Like where are your pensions? And if that's your future that you're banking on, right? Where are they? What are they invested in? Is it something that's at risk from climate change? So are you investing in major agribusiness? right? And if they get wiped out by climate change and the business goes out of business, what happens to your pension? So people aren't thinking through where you live. Are you at risk? What is the risk? And I know people are moving into flood zones. I wouldn't move into a flood zone. As we're seeing in Brazil, people aren't even in flood zones who are being flooded, right? So there's more moisture in the atmosphere. Where's the river? How far, high up are you? Because you can't look back for evidence of what's going to happen. We've got to work out forward what's coming at us based on changing climate. So there's just a lack of imagination, and I know it's scary, but actually there's a lot of relief in facing it. It's like, oh, okay, so this, and this. All right, so try and navigate yourself the best you can to keep your family safe, but understanding that the big risks down the track they're pretty grim. You may or may not survive. There's a level of acceptance that comes there before probably you go through despair before you get to acceptance for sure. But got to think it through.
I mean, but before you get to despair, you're in denial. And I think that's where a lot of people are. If you look at Kubler-Ross. So
yeah. So I was thinking we should just go through, maybe just quickly mention how much Taylor Swift's going to bring to the UK with her Eros tour, and then we'll get into the final theme. Tim, do you want to quickly have a look at that one?
Sure.
We don't have to do it all.
Taylor Swift. Okay. So from Sirius to Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift's success and power knows no end. On NME.com, Taylor Swift's Taylor's Eras tour impact on the UK economy is expected to be £1 billion. Incredible. Her tour.
By the way, I want to. Can I just clarify that it's N, letter M, letter E?
I heard enemy too.
Enemy. Yeah, letter N. Enemy.
That's clever, right?
It is very clever. Anyway, £1 billion. Her tour of the UK includes 8 sold-out shows at Wembley Stadium, as well as shows in Edinburgh, Liverpool, Cardiff, and Dublin. Swift's UK fans are expected to spend almost £850 each when attending her shows, which will significantly benefit the UK's experience economy. Of the 1.1 million ticket holders for the singer's 15 UK dates across June and August, they're expected to purchase new outfits specifically for the concerts. However, most of the expenditure will go on accommodation, tickets, transport, and merchandise. The figure exceeds the nearly £400 typically spent attending a wedding in the UK and the £780 for a stag or hen party. What? Equally spending by fans for one Eras tour gig is over 12 times the average £67 cost of a night out in the United Kingdom. The average price for Swift's live shows is £206. When tickets went on sale last summer, it resulted in a 15% increase in UK entertainment spending. This is crazy, really. Here's the run. This is one person turning up to sing her songs when you can just listen to it for free on Spotify. Anyway, here's the rundown on spending according to Barclays. £206 on a ticket, £121 on accommodation, £110 on transport, £78 on official merchandise, £60 on pre-concert meal, £56 on a new outfit, and £216 on additional costs such as alcohol, unofficial merchandise, CDs and LPs, really, and friendship bracelets. The Eras tour has already crossed the $1 billion mark and is on course to become the most lucrative tour in music history. It has had a significant impact on the US economy and brought 0.2 percentage points of GDP to Singapore's economy, which is roughly equivalent to $200 million. And her boyfriend's friend wants her to stay in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. Presuming they're friends. That's crazy, right? Like, it's really, really crazy. Just, people have criticized her because of her private jet travel. But what's the emissions and the single-use plastic waste that goes from her merch? People flying from all over the world to go and see her concerts. Like, one of the things I keep thinking about, we can if we can bring everything else down 80%, we can still have Taylor Swift and all the other guys flying around the world doing their shows, making people happy. But we can't have that and everything else at the same time. So I think we've got to make a decision,
So out of the ticket, accommodation, transport, official merchandise, pre-concert meals, new outfit, and additional costs, we will just get the ticket, accommodation, and transport. No merchandise, no new outfit, because it's going to garbage lasagnas, and no unofficial merchandise, and friendship bracelets are the dumbest thing in the world.
Hey, just because you don't understand it, it's a part of the bonding process.
It's them in the audience doing that, and all the lights change in the stadium, right?
No. It's
no, friendship bracelets,
a trade.
actual bracelets. Yeah,
they trade with each other. It's no. It's
beads
and
stuff, yeah.
You walk around with your friendship bracelet on. People identify that you're one of them. So it's no, I think it's a cool part of it. But there's a lot of material going into those friendship bracelets, right?
If it's between a friendship bracelet and a frying pan or a heating element, okay. Anyway, yep.
No, I was just saying, if only it could be the case that we could have concert T-shirts work the same way as we had passports back in the old days. You just bring the one concert T-shirt, and then you get a new stamp every time you go to a concert.
Oh, so simple then. All right, so propaganda. So we want to make sure we're not going to go over 2 hours today. There's been a couple of pieces that have come through. So one's from Chatham House, and it's and these will obviously all be in the weekend reads. Russian disruption of Europe points to patterns of future aggression. So I remember years ago I posted up a quote basically saying we're already in World War III. This is back at the beginning of the last decade. And someone sort of jumped on and said, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, well, we're in an information war. And then there's another article in The Atlantic called Autocracies Are Winning the Information War, and it links back to some deeper content as well. And this is a real problem. This is a really, really, really big problem. And we've got to get a handle on it, because we're heading towards, do you know that democracies in the world have reduced from 40% to 20%? You guys know that, right? So only 20% of countries in the world are now democracies, and some of those democracies are now under threat. Even America is under threat from authoritarianism. And that's lack of freedom, lack of choices. Like you think of all the freedoms that people say they're fighting for in the US, including the right. Well, all those freedom and choices will be taken away unless you're on the right side. Women back in the kitchen will probably be a reality, Handmaid's Tale sort of stuff. But there's people like David Sachs, who's PayPal entrepreneur, who basically said that the Ukrainian government was behind the terrorist attack in Russia, even though that it wasn't. And the commentary is, why do we even listen to people like that? There's a boycott on celebrities at the moment. I don't know if you've seen it, because if they're not speaking out in support of Palestine, I don't think we should be encouraging Kim Kardashian to speak out on important issues, because I actually do not care what she's got to say. The criticism of their participation at the Met Gala while the Israelis was going into Rafah, and the juxtaposition between the imagery. I'm sure you've seen the people on the red carpet and the children sort of escaping for their lives. I get that. But we've got a problem and we need to address it. So anyway, so you guys want to jump on?
Well, I mean, as I was doing a little bit of research for the topic, first of all, I think we're all familiar with the predominant meaning of the word propaganda, but I was also somewhat amused to learn that propaganda also refers to a committee of cardinals that the Roman Catholic Church formed to be responsible for foreign missions. So anyway, the
first
thing about
propaganda.
It was about propagating the gospel. So that's where that came from. It was about a propagation, and so yeah.
Which technically to me is propaganda. But anyway, we might go into a religious conversation.
Well, I mean, it is, and I mean, I guess my thing on the democracy part that you mentioned before about democracy dropping to 20%. If Andrea, all the CEOs were listening to the show today and went, you know what, she knows what she's talking about. Why don't we get Andrea? Let's all fund Andrea to run the solution for this. And you've got free reign to do some stuff. Would you remove a bunch of the political systems that are in play that are just perpetuating the problem And my answer is probably yes. You've got an opportunity to make a huge difference, but you would require an authoritarian regime to make it happen. And I think that there's a possibility that some people are thinking that the current system isn't working. It's working to a huge degree in that we've had huge periods of prosperity and peace, and got a lot of countries out of poverty and created a lot of opportunity, and it's been incredible. But we have moved past the idealism that it's giving into a stage of personality conflicts, and then that personality runs the show and does whatever the heck they want, and then they dangle billion-dollar carrots and all of this sort of stuff. So it's like you might propagate your own ideal based on your version of what the truth is, and dismantle some democratic structures because you perceive them to be inherently broken, and you want to rebuild them in your image, so to speak. And so, in a sense, I can understand why some countries might choose an authoritarian. I think they're taking a huge risk in their freedom and liberties by doing so, but they're hoping for the promised solution to come in, and that the person isn't self-absorbed and selfish. And I think, and it would come down to an extraordinarily strong conviction in your belief that what you're doing is right and that the world needs to hear it. And I guess going back to that group of cardinals, that was their position.
It's a really interesting one. So one of the things that's happened with democracy in the last sort of couple of decades is it's very rare for any country to have absolute numbers in parliament. So the Tories got a majority in the last election, but countries like America and Australia, there's one person deciding vote, right? So first of all, we need that to change. So there needs to be a majority that's actually got power to do something.
Yep.
There's so much corruption, lobbying, all that sort of stuff that needs to be tackled in politics. Yeah, we do need a complete and utter revolution, maybe something beyond democracy. None of us know what that is yet, but it'll probably unveil itself in coming years. The authoritarianisms that concern me are the people who say, I can fix this, and I don't believe in climate change, and I don't believe in biodiversity loss, and I don't believe in this, and oil, baby, oil, right? Pump it. They're the ones that are going to take us on the wrong path. I think another huge focus needs to be getting trust back and the integrity back in our institutions. So that's obviously law, policing, medical, education. So many of the wealthy countries, England, Australia, just listen to any of your teacher mates, any of your nursing mates. We've destroyed the institutions. If you've got weak institutions and you go through a crisis, boy, life's going to be a lot tougher for everyone. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. But I don't know. I just think everything that everyone's doing at the moment is not working. So let's just sort of take a step back and say, all right, here we are. There's no one rule fits all. The way Singapore is run or the way China is run, that can't be taken to America because there's just going to be violence and pushbacks, right? I don't think we're going to avoid the violence no matter what we do. So we've got to look at it from a country by country, culture by culture perspective. Asia's great because it can bring its people together, and there's a lot of people in this part of the world. So we could actually achieve a lot because people are a lot more willing to work together for the good of all. The individualism that we've talked about before, especially with Joe, that needs to go.
Yeah.
Materialism, the consumertron sort of culture. We need to be destroying industries like the fast fashion industry because it's just destroying the environment and it's not good. So there's a lot. It's a big, huge problem. But if every person recruited 3 or 4 more people in their community to change their behaviour, we'd be if we get 1 billion people to recruit 3 to 4 more people, we get to close to 5 billion. We've got more than half the world's population on board. and we all agree to shrink our impact down. And the fossil fuel executives and the authoritarians, they can be bleaten off in the corner, but the rest of us just need to turn around in the other direction and say, what do we want? Let's move towards that. A gentler way of living, a smaller way of living, less impact on the earth. We slow down. It's a big, big message. Everyone's running around like traveling everywhere they can before it all falls over, buying what they can before, it's this mindset of this frenzy of got to do it now before it's all gone. Like, so people know, they know it's coming because their behavior is showing. Yeah. Yeah. Which is a beautiful country, right? So got to slow down, chill out, easier lives.
So the idea that I'm playing around with in my head right now is how would you feel if Donald Trump was everything that he is right now, but he's completely on the environmental side. He's completely on this idea that what he wants to do right now is to get rid of everything and change everything and be that dictator on day one and shut down all the things that are wrong with the industries that are polluting the world. If he was that, would we be comfortable with that? And I think that's at the heart of at the heart of democracy. This is the thing about the most people can't like the definition of what a democracy is, right? People say, well, a democracy is this and therefore it's a democracy. I don't know if Singapore passes muster in terms of being a democracy by some standards. I don't know if China is regarded as a democracy by some standards, because and again, where do your standards sort of say that Russia is a democracy as well, right? They do have elections and very dangerous windows. So
yeah,
the measure of what we want to do is usually based on what we are unhappy about as well. Like, people will complain about something not working because they're not getting what they want. And like the true measure of a democracy is really supposed to be, does the majority get what it wants? Does the majority being looked after? Because it's supposed to be a majority. Do we believe in true democracy, where 51% of people think this, and therefore 49% of the rest have to go like, well, we'll do without? Or is democracy really the process of factioning, where you actually say like, well, 20% of you believe this, 20% of you believe this, and the rest of you believe this, and whatever it is. And if we can figure out something, all of you are going to get what you want, where you are, and therefore we're going to have to break this whole thing up. That's a real challenge. I think and the thing about the trade-off is that we used to live in a time when people looked to leadership. We live in a time now where the illusion is that the leader is ourselves. We believe too much in ourselves. There is the sense that what I feel is real, rather than the facts. And if I that's why I put the question to you in terms of how would you feel, how would you react as well if the tables were turned and Donald Trump, instead of being the person and representing the ideas that he has right now, would use the same methods of rhetoric and just saying what's convenient and whatever, but being on your side instead? How would that feel?
Like I said, he disgusts me. He has no integrity as far as I'm concerned, and he never has. And he is not a man of wisdom. The people that we need to be voting for now need to be wise. And that's not old, that's not young, it's just wise. And big picture thinkers. But for him, no, because even if he was on my side, right, the inconsistency in his behavior, like when he changes his mind every day. But no, there's no way that Donald Trump would ever do that. So, and I'm not politically, like, I don't care if Republican, Democrat, Labor, Liberal. I don't care. I don't care about any of that stuff. But I do care about, like, I think Singapore is one of the greatest examples in the world of democracy, even though people would disagree with it, because the vast majority of people in Singapore are taken care of.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but the vast majority, and that's what matters. a vast majority, and we've got to embrace consensus again. You know, we're not all going to agree with each other.
Weirdly enough, the one thing that everybody agrees on globally is that, to a degree, is that we need some money to survive. And so that there is a common currency in the world that is currency. And it seems to me like if you look at Joe's factioning, like, okay, you 20% believe this and you 20% believe that and everything else. I think if you are wrong, we're going to take everything away from you. Well, not everything, but there's going to be a financial penalty. There's no financial penalty to Donald Trump if he's wrong. I mean, he seems to be losing finances hand over fist, of course, but he's putting him.
Yeah, but he'll be dead, right? He'll be dead.
True.
No,
but
just look at his age, right? So there's no penalty for him because he won't be alive to suffer it.
Well, then he should be excluded from making decisions for the future for people.
Exactly. I think basically,
and that means Biden as well,
under 50,
which goes back to the succession planning stuff. But then you're going to end up with a Macron or a Canadian dude. So
yeah.
So Trudeau was it?
One of the things, where is it? There was a piece in the Atlantic, right? So governments can't solve this problem. So nothing can be solved by governments alone anymore. And I think for the last 50, 60, 70 years, post World War II, we've all gotten lazy, especially in developed countries and where wealth is. We've gotten lazy. People are sitting on their ass and expecting everything to be handed to them on a plate. That's the era that's over now. And so then we all need to get back involved, right? So,
well, we've got AI now. It's going to do everything else for us.
Well, yeah, but individual citizens. So the most influential person in your community is your friends and family. So more influential than anything else, any media, any famous people, the most influential people are the people that you know and that you're closest to. So we've got to embrace that, right? And so we've got to really confront each other about the bad information that's getting around, because I mean, as a logical person, you kind of look at it and you're like, why would anyone believe that? Like flat earthers, why? Well, I don't understand, unless you're being a smart ass and having some fun. But a lot of the conspiracy theories, like I keep an eye on them. There's always a kernel of truth, which is what gets people sucked in, right? But it doesn't take that much digging to go, that should be a red alert to everybody. So I know a lot of people are exhausted by this over the last few years, especially the last decade, the divisions, especially within families, people closest to you. It's just really, really hard to talk to the crazy old uncle or the crazy old aunt. Like, you're not going to get anywhere. But the questions that they say are, where did you hear that? So I shared an example with my son, Jax, a couple of weeks ago, where he told me an opinion and I had read that opinion. And then I said to him, where did you get that opinion? And he'd heard it as an opinion and embraced it as his own opinion, right? So I told him to go and watch what he had an opinion on. And then I talked about it last time, right? So that was a good challenge for him. Why do you trust that source? Which is a great question. If you're looking at multiple sources and hearing lots of different opinions, that's a much better way, because then you get different perspectives. Do you think I, as a friend or family member, am lying to you if I tell you that it's not true? There's three really simple questions there. We can all take that responsibility on, because we've got to work together to solve the problem. Because it's getting out of control. And the purpose of propaganda today is to stop us being engaged. And all you have to do is look around your community across the world, look on social media. People are disengaging in droves at a time when we need to get engaged. So it's really working. It's really working.
The issue that I see that we face with that, Andrea, is that everything you describe to talk about the truth, the reality of the world, the facts of the world, would equally apply to someone who is talking about something where they, first of all, they're going on the basis of their beliefs, which would have been based on disinformation in the first place, right? So the answers to the same questions that you asked would be, yes, I believe my source. No, I'm not lying. What are your sources? Mine are the real sources. So that's the challenge. The challenge is actually a reliable way for people to really know what happened, and that's really an impossibility, because the world is just about stories. We are going to see the world completely based on our perspective on the stuff that's happened to us before or not happened to us. In answer to the question why people can't figure it out or don't think about it, is because people only think about some things once they come across it for the very first time in their lives. I will speak for myself. The first time I came across network marketing, MLM, I thought it was the most brilliant thing.
Mm.
And there's some things about it
What do you
still to
dream?
me, which is like,
Draw some circles.
this could work. This could really work, right? I mean, that's the whole thing about it. But and then you go one step at a time. Something else that you say is it is true. Nothing is completely untrue, and it is possible that this might happen, right?
Mhm.
I've often thought about going back to a moment in history and just rewriting the context around it, and saying, what if this was happening instead, and would this still be true as a story? And many times the answer to me has been, yeah, that could completely have been the interpretation of what this moment is about as well. So when people are in the midst of it, I mean, I've been in the company of literally the CEO of and this was early in the day, but he was the CEO of an aerospace company, right? And I thought on all fronts, really very decent, smart, all the different things you'd expect from someone in that space, with the exception that he was a huge Fox News watcher and he loved Trump. And I
Mm.
went, how does this fit into the scheme of things? I mean, and sometimes in terms of the belief in the narratives that are told. I mean, for me, there's some people who are Trumpists because the some aspects of what he does, or what he does business wise, which is actually what they want. There's some things that really irritate them about the America today that he's promising the big change on. And the one thing that really has, I mean, okay, look, so we talk about unreliable and all the different things. What I've heard and what I've seen in terms of deliverables and some of the things that actually have been delivered under a Trump administration, um, whether they've been tasteful or not, some of these things have been delivered on. And quite a number of things actually have been delivered on, and very quickly as well. Um, so there is some appeal. It definitely is not ideal. It'd be much better if there was a world where there was someone who was much more wise and somehow younger at the same time, and inclusive at the same time, who also was given a mandate that said, go fix the world, we're going to support you no matter what it's going to be about, and we'll all do this together. But it's just not going to happen. It just isn't going to happen like that. It's just the nature of the beast is democracy cannot let someone just come in and do what they want.
Yeah, we need the council of elders or the sage council or something like that. The
Yep.
wisdom, it's a completely different thing, right? That we need. But
Yep.
I'm not disagreeing with you, like the one side, the other side. So, because to me, it's not about sides. I'm just listening to it all. And also, there's always this focus on Trump. Actually, Trump isn't the danger. It's this team that he's got around him, who are all ready for term 2, and that's a lot more severe than term 1. But should we wrap up with what's keeping us distracted? Unless you want to make any final points.
If I can just make one point about propaganda and stories, right? We need to build. We need to build the. We need to build the superheroes on the good side. I mean, that's simply what we have to do.
Mm,
You need people who are willing to come forward and do the storytelling at a better level than what's being done on the other side. And you know, if you remember, you know, being a kid, right? The liar is the guy who can do anything he wants because all he has to do is say something new, and it's the new reality, right? And the difficult task is to try to keep the narrative about the truth straight and make it interesting. But we need
mm,
people who can do that. We need people who are able to look at the significance of things and say to you, look, listen, I hear what you're saying, but let's play it out a little bit more. We need people, like you said, you know, if you talk about the council of elders or sages, that's great. But what we kind of need as well is we need those people in your field of influence to be the people who ask those questions and help people think through things and have those supreme skills to hear someone say something completely off the wall and to guide them through a thought process that would
mm.
actually lead them to go, okay, oh, okay, interesting, that's a different perspective, let me think about that. It's a tough one because I think one thing we could the one thing we could
What's that?
do, and then the one thing we could do really that would make a significant difference to the way the world works is actually a magic pill that will just dull emotions for long enough. We
Yeah,
just
right.
need to kill emotions altogether. It'll destroy the quality. So this is my Thanos moment as well. This is my 80% solution that you're coming up to, right? If all of us just felt 80% less strongly about things, we could probably do a lot more things.
Yeah, nice.
You know, the other question would be, why do people feel the need to feel so strongly about something?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and if you look at America, the whole place seems to be pick your team, right? We've talked about this before. Pick your
Mm,
team, defend your team, be heated and fiery about your team, and never change your team, even if the captain of the team is changed to an idiot. Stay with your team, you know. And it's like I think with propaganda, we need to be discerning, and we need to ask, like Andrea was saying, we need to ask questions. And we need to ask ourselves questions. We need to be a bit introspective and reflect on why are we getting so heated about a particular issue, especially if especially if we're getting angry and wanting to hurt someone over something
mm.
extraordinarily trivial. And you can see the vitriol online over nonsense. And there is this enormous need to be right and to castigate, to just demean people who don't have that same, who don't agree. And I wonder if it's, and I mean, I wonder if it's extraordinarily symptomatic of a dissatisfaction that we have in our own life that we are effectively projecting onto others, and we're attacking them to make ourselves feel better without dealing with the issues that are in our own lives at the moment. And I think that that's probably a large portion of the problem. And part of that is a feeling of a lack of empowerment or self-agency to be able to make decisions that can correct a situation that we find ourselves in. And part of that is, what is the narrative or the aspirational ideal that we feel that we need to get to, that we're unable to get to, that makes us so disenfranchised that we need to attack other people. So I think there's a number of elements in just that quick statement that is at play, that we're being fed an ideal that we can't get to, and we are getting angry at the situation that we can't have any sort of self-control of being able to get there, and we're just pointing fingers at other people. So I think
You should clip that. You should
Yeah.
clip that as a little video, because you summed it up. And self-awareness at the center of it, right?
It is,
Yeah,
and it's being
if you're-
coachable. It's being listening
and-
to other people too. Sorry, go ahead. I wasn't listening.
No, but that feeling. If you're constantly reacting in anger and rage, and and it's unquenchable, this feeling, right? To me, that's always the very, very first sign that you need to step back and go, wait a minute, what am I really angry with here?
Yep.
It's not that minority group, because they're actually in a worse position than I am. Even though the government's telling me that they're the problem, it's not. They're not the problem. That's the problem on the other side. That's what I'm angry with. So I've got to stop attacking them and start.
Or
really
here.
sort of, yeah.
The problem is often here. I'm not doing
frustration.
anything. Yeah, I remember once. The analogy is you open your eyes for the first time in a long time, and you realize you're in a huge hole, and you can look up and you can see the blue sky above, but you're stuck in a huge hole, and in your hand is a shovel, and there's a very real possibility that you're the one who dug that hole.
Yeah. So the world's sitting in that hole right now.
We are in that hole, and there's a way out, but it's not continuing to dig down.
Yeah.
It's digging sideways and covering ourselves with a bit of dirt while we try to build the ramp out of there. It's getting a bit dirty, and it's standing on top of that to get out, or it's asking for help and getting to the point where to say, I need somebody else. I need somebody else's help here. So, unfortunately,
I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel this way. People have got this negative feelings in their bodies, and just saying, I don't want to feel this way anymore. That's also a path forward, because then you start saying, well, but why do I feel this way? Contentment and peace within ourselves. We're constantly, we don't know how to find that. That's I think another challenge.
Well,
what's keeping you distracted?
Who wants to go, Joe?
All right. I'll take the opportunity to give you a very quick idea that's distracting me currently. I'd like to experiment with the idea of magic mushroom dust being used globally, and we'll see what happens.
That's how the brain developed, right?
Yeah, well, somewhere in there. Or you gotta. I think in a misquoting of the old thing, sometimes in life you gotta lick a few frogs. Okay, so in terms of what is distracting me at the moment, what was really inspiring for me is watching the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling. It's a 2-part documentary done by Judd Apatow, who's a great filmmaker and comedian, and he has done a number of documentaries already. He did the one for I forget his name now, but it's okay. But for now, the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling, really very good. Well, it's less funny than poignant. I mean, what I really appreciate about that is the process of someone working through his stuff, the world around him, understanding what he had to do, and at the same time, I mean, I've turned part of what I learned from that into a slightly offensive post to some. I said, in my LinkedIn, commit to killing, which is in the context of comedy, it's about making sure you get out, you step out and get on stage, and you always do such a great job that the audience is completely floored. You want them to be, you want to win that completely. So commit to killing. And it's just one of the steps along the way. And I think you'll enjoy the journey of the person because, and I don't want to put a spoiler on this, but believe it or not, after watching both installments of that documentary, I think you will get something that will actually help these last 2 hours feel or give it some sort of a meaningful context as well. So remarkably, Gary Shandling was kind of a monk, and that's all I'm going to say. So go check it out. It's the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling on HBO.
Sounds good. Tim?
2 things. One is, of course, my assignments, which I've been sort of plowing through. I just did a pastoral theology assignment, which is ready to go and due today, but it's done, which is great. And the other one is on Reinhold Niebuhr and his social, his ethics and his confronting will to power, and it's a whole bunch of stuff which is quite interesting, I think, even with what we've been talking about as well. But that's the next one that I've got to sink my teeth into. But the second thing is I've been playing this little game on Apple Arcade with Zoe, and I'm sorry to say this is terrible based on the show that we've just had, but it's called Turmoil, and it's about drilling for oil. But it is such a cool little game. It's so simple and it's just easy to play, but it's so
normalization of drilling through our children, right? Excellent.
Well, not really. It's just there's an opportunity for conversation, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a game, and it's not saying it's good, but it's just a game, and the objective of the game is to take over power and make more money than the other three players, and that's the problem.
Yeah, but that's kind of most games too, right? Yeah. So Steve's coming back tonight, so after 2 weeks away. So I finally sat down and watched Mother of the Bride, which is Brooke Shields, and it's filmed in Phuket. And a bunch of people I know here were involved in some form or another around the movie. It's a little bit corny, it's a little bit clumsy, but it's a nice little rom-com, and I enjoyed it. So Jay, you won't like it.
I saw the trailer and I was distracted by how bad she was. But I'll let you have your fun.
Yeah, no, it's harmless. Like I need the brain breaks, right? But of course, the most exciting news in TV land is Bridgerton is back for its final season. So the first few have dropped, and the next few are dropping in June. So I know that Steve will be keen to watch those with me. So yeah, Bridgerton.
Hey, by the way, I started watching Fallout and I couldn't get through. I got halfway through the first episode and I sort of pressed pause, which I tend to do when I get a bit uncomfortable about something like that. I wandered off the toilet, came back and said to Lydia, I don't think this is for me. And it was just the violence. I get it. That's part of the whole thing, but that sort of stuff I couldn't go through. I wanted to like it a lot more than I did. I liked Silo better. Have you watched Silo?
Yeah, but I couldn't finish.
But I wanted as well.
I couldn't finish Silo. That was starting to get too depressing as well. It's like, if you want to look at the future, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, but I enjoyed it, but I could tell there were moments where it was feeling a bit like Lost, where they were just dragging things out
exactly
too long. It could have been about 4 episodes shorter, I thought, but yeah.
Well, hang on. So have you got through one episode, or you say you stopped halfway through the first episode?
I stopped, but Lydia kept going because she's okay with violence.
Okay.
For example, I stopped at the point in the very first episode where the person was about to go into the robotic armed, they're not robotic, but the fully armed thing, and they put their foot in a boot and somebody had put a razor blade or something in there and they cut their foot. And I was just like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm too visual. That's the problem. I can replay stuff that scares me in my head all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just I don't need to put that in. So
yeah. All right, let's wrap things up. So some cool news for you guys. Well, it's cool news, I think. Climate Courage is going to be back next Friday for the first time this year, and it's mainly because I didn't want to do it by myself. So Dr. David Coe and Richard Busolato have agreed to be co-hosts with me. So Climate Courage is coming back. So it was kind of nice having every second Friday just to chill and not have to focus on something. But anyway,
once a month.
Myself. Yeah, there's a lot of topics.
Yeah, fair enough.
As we've talked about. But thanks, guys. It's been great. And I think
are we taking a break for a while?
No, I think we've got Axe coming on for our next show.
Oh, okay. And then we're taking a break.
Rollison.
Is there a break? There's no break.
No, we've got a couple more shows coming up, and then we have a
Okay.
break. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Tim's ready for a break, Joe.
Yeah, no. I will be on a break because I know my mum is coming up in 10 days, and after that,
Yeah.
I'm out for about a month.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
We'll keep you updated. All right, guys. See ya. Have a great weekend.
Bye,
And,
all.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for
2
listening.
hours, 4 minutes. We did it. We're not too bad, but
Yeah,
so much for a
come on.
1 hour show.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Mm.